Today, we're diving into a story that goes way beyond sports. It's a narrative of unbelievable determination, shocking tragedy, and a legacy that is just never going to be forgotten. But to really feel the weight of this story, we need to set the scene. Picture this. It's July 3rd, 2026. We're in Toronto. It's a massive FIFA World Cup round of 32 clash between Portugal and Croatia. The match has literally just ended in the most dramatic way you can imagine. Portugal was trailing 1-0, right? But they pull off this stunning 2-1 comeback. Cristiano Ronaldo ties it up with a penalty. And then, deep into injury time, Gonzalo Ramos buries a brilliant header to win it. But, as the final whistle blew, the biggest story wasn't the comeback. It wasn't the tactics. It wasn't the goals. Instead, every camera in the stadium shifted to this highly emotional, honestly kind of confusing scene unfolding with Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo, arguably the greatest player of his generation, is just standing there on the pitch, in tears. But he isn't crying because they won. Fans suddenly realize that instead of his iconic number 7, Ronaldo was wearing a number 21 jersey. He looks up to the sky and just pulls that jersey tightly against his chest. The entire stadium went absolutely dead silent. This wasn't a celebration, it was a tribute. Because exactly 1 year prior to the very day, the football world lost the man who wore that number 21, a guy who grew up idolizing Ronaldo and actually fought his way to become his teammate. To understand how heavy this moment truly is, we have to go back to the very beginning. Section 1. A boy from Gondomar. Long before the bright lights of the World Cup, we find ourselves in December 1996 in a working-class town called Gondomar, right near Porto. This is where Diogo Jota's story starts. He didn't come from some famous footballing family. His dad drove a crane, and his mom worked in a car factory. Super humble beginnings, miles away from the glitz of pro sports. Yet, since he was a little kid, Jota had this one burning dream. He was going to be a pro footballer. Now, usually, if a Portuguese kid wants to make it, it's all about getting into one of the big 3 academies, Benfica, Sporting, or Porto. But for Jota, not an option. He was flat out rejected. Why? Because they said he was too small and too weak to play forward. They literally just ignored him. So, at 9 years old, he joined his local club, Gondomar SC. But here is where Jota's real superpower kicks in. Ask his childhood coaches, and they'll tell you his biggest asset wasn't his feet, it was his brain. He had this ironclad determination. He didn't let those physical rejections get to him. Instead, it's like he saw every single no as a personal challenge. Get this, he was so hyper-focused on making it that he started learning English as a kid, specifically because he knew he was going to play abroad one day. Talk about manifesting your future, right? He had this motto, it doesn't matter where we come from, but where we're going. And man, that mindset drove everything he did. Section 2, Rise to the Premier League. Okay, so once Jota actually gets his foot in the door, his rise is like a rocket ship. Let's speed things up a bit, because his trajectory was chaotic, but incredibly fast. At just 18, he makes his senior debut for Paços de Ferreira and instantly turns heads. His coach at the time made this huge claim, literally saying this kid was going to be Cristiano Ronaldo's successor. In 2016, the dream seems to come true when he signs with Spanish giants Atletico Madrid. But fate tests him again. He doesn't play a single official match for their first team. He gets shipped out on loan, first to Porto and then over to Wolverhampton Wanderers in England. And it's at Wolves, under manager Nuno Espirito Santo, that the whole puzzle comes together. The coach believes in him, and Jota pays him back by dropping 17 goals in one season, dragging Wolves to Premier League promotion. The kid who was too small for the local academies had just conquered the toughest league on the planet. Section 3, Starring at Anfield. By 2020, Jota hits the absolute pinnacle of English football. Liverpool comes calling. But here's the thing, when Jota walked into Anfield, he was stepping into a dressing room that already had the legendary trio of Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, and Roberto Firmino. Everyone in the public thought he was just going to ride the bench. Actually, scratch that. They thought he was just an expensive backup plan. But Jurgen Klopp, he had a totally different vision. Klopp pulled him aside and essentially said, "You aren't here to be a backup, you're here to challenge them." And wow, did he deliver. He scored on his Premier League debut against Arsenal, and then casually netted a Champions League hat-trick against Atalanta shortly after. He proved from day one he was a pure match winner. But despite all that success, the guy had absolutely zero ego. None. He never acted like a superstar. He was famous for being the absolute hardest worker on the pitch, long after official training was over. If a new guy joined the squad, Jota was always the first one to walk up, shake their hand, and make them feel at home. And on game day, he'd play whatever position the manager asked him to without a single complaint. It's exactly why managers like Klopp and later Arne Slot absolutely adored having him around. And of course, that work ethic paid off on the international stage too. 49. That's how many caps he earned for the Portuguese national team. Just think about that little boy watching TV back in Gondomar. He grew up to share a dressing room and the pitch with his ultimate idol, Cristiano Ronaldo. Over those 49 matches, he scored 14 goals and was a massive part of the team that won the UEFA Nations League not once, but twice. He had literally reached the top of the mountain. Section 4. The sudden tragedy. Our story takes a really devastating turn right here. And I want to slow down for a second, because what happens next is just incredibly difficult to process. The contrast between the highest peak of his life and what followed is just heartbreaking. June 2025 was probably the happiest, most beautiful month of Diogo Jota's life. First, he lifts his second Nations League trophy with Portugal. Millions of people saw that image of him smiling with the cup. Then, just days later, on June 22nd, he marries his childhood friend, the mother of his 3 kids, Ruth Cardoso. Social media was just flooded with these beautiful, happy pictures of them. But then, barely 11 days after his wedding, the morning of July 3rd, 2025, while driving in the Zamora region of Spain, Jota and his younger brother Andre were involved in a fatal car crash. Both of them lost their lives at the scene. The shockwave that hit the football world was absolute. Within minutes, it was like everything just stopped. From Liverpool to Portugal, from the Premier League to Atletico Madrid, his name was the only thing anyone could talk about. And the outpouring of grief, it wasn't just fans mourning a sports star. It genuinely felt like supporters all over the globe had lost a member of their own family. The vibrant, hardworking, humble guy from Gondomar was just gone. Way, way too soon. Section 5. A legacy beyond trophies. Which brings us gently back to where we started today. Back to that highly emotional night in Toronto in 2026. 1 year later, when Ronaldo held that number 21 jersey up to the sky. It really begs the question, what exactly is the legacy Diogo Jota left behind? Now, on paper, the legacy is undeniably incredible. 182 matches for Liverpool, 65 goals. He won the Premier League, the FA Cup, the League Cup. For Portugal, 49 caps, 14 goals, 2 Nations League titles. He had this crazy habit of just completely changing the momentum of a game with one clutch goal when his team needed it most. But as amazing as those stats are, numbers alone totally fail to capture who he really was. If you just look at the stats, you miss the man. Because his true essence is captured in things like this. He's allowed from Portugal, better than Figo, don't you know? Oh, his name is Diogo. That chant still rings out around Anfield today. The fans didn't just sing for his goals, they sang because he was one of them. He was this massive superstar on the pitch, but completely ordinary and unassuming off it. He never chased the headlines. Liverpool fans immortalized him because they recognized that profound humility. They took the ordinary guy from Gondomar and made him a permanent part of their family. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. How did a boy who was rejected for his size and completely ignored by the elite academies end up conquering the biggest leagues in the world? His greatest victory was never a trophy. His greatest victory was proving to millions of kids playing in the streets that you don't need a famous last name, and you sure don't need a fancy academy background to reach the very top. All you need is an absolutely unbreakable will. He conquered the football world, won the hearts of millions, and left us way too soon. Every victory for Portugal now and forever feels like a victory for Diogo Jota.